welcome. We're glad you're here. Me and Maile are ready to just talk story about some lighthearted topics, donkeys and baseball, and some fun people in Kona's past. So aloha and welcome. So this is going to be recorded. So I want to say that at the beginning. So in case you can't stay for the whole thing, don't worry. We're going to have this online for you probably by Friday. So it'll be available almost immediately for you to rewatch, check out the cute donkey photos we're going to be showing you. And you can also check out our last programs from this series. This is called the From the Collection series. And we were inspired to do this because with the closures that happened, the staff kind of got to spend more time looking at in the collections and looking at things we don't always get to see. So we don't always get to pull out. We have a lot of really robust, interesting programs, but our archive is huge and we have so many things to share. So this is our way of being able to share just a little bit of it, maybe pique your interest and get the staff excited again. So mahalo to everyone who made this happen, especially to Maile. Every person on staff at KHS has to help with this program or add some sort of insight or help. So mahalo to everyone for that. So I am Audrey Blair. I'm the public programs manager here. My face is probably starting to look sort of familiar because I'm the one who does all of our programs. But today we're welcoming back our favorite guest speaker, Maile Melrose. And many of you are going to know her from her years of living in Kona and working with everyone. But some of you may have seen her virtual series she did for us back when the shutdown first happened, Mondays with Maile. Those were a lot of fun and are also recorded. So if you want to hear some good stories about, grim tales at sea and alcohol in Kona and all sorts of Spanish flu in Kona, all these interesting topics, those are online as well on our website. So Maile is a local historian and a treasured story keeper and teller of Kona. And in fact, this year she actually won an award, an individual achievement award through the Historic Hawaii Foundation. So I want to always acknowledge that. She's such a treasure. We also, what's that?
Such a treasure. Thank you, Audrey.
Treasure, yes. Okay, so we're going to start with introducing our photograph that kind of sparked this, and then we're going to show you guys some photos that we would like to know more about. We're going to chat about them too. At the end, we'll do a Q&A, but if you have a question throughout the program, go ahead and submit your question and we'll read them at the end. I don't want anyone to forget their questions in the middle. So go ahead and submit them. We'll get to as many as we can before the end of the 45 minutes. So this month's topic, we always try to find good inspiration for our topics. And this month, I actually didn't have an idea. All I knew was I wanted Maile to come back and hang out with us. So I went to Maile and I said, Maile, what do you think we should talk about? And so we chewed it over. We thought about anniversaries that are happening in Kona right now. We thought about historic event anniversaries or companies or businesses or events, catastrophes. And we chewed on some of those. And then Maile asked me, well, is there a photo that deserves more explanation? And I thought that sounded like a really fun idea to take a photo and kind of show you our process of finding out what we can find out about a photo in our archive that maybe doesn't have all the information. So I took this question to our excellent collections manager, Julie Kamiyama, and she, of course, has tons of photos that we would love to know a lot about. But one stuck out. She recalled a photo that's right here in the center of this slide, but here's a bigger photo of it. Of a bunch of gentlemen riding donkeys, and the caption read, "Donkey Baseball at Konaawaena." And it actually didn't have a date. We know the date because of the research we did with Maile. And we didn't know much about it. We didn't know why people were riding donkeys. We didn't know why they were at Konaawaena. We didn't know the date. And we thought, oh, perfect. Let's see what we can find. So this is the full-size image of the photo in question. And as you can see from just observing, you can see it's all men riding donkeys, some in business suits, some a little more casual. You can see it's at Konaawaena. Maile, you told me that building you recognize. Can you tell us what building that was in the photo?
Yeah, this is the intermediate school at Konaawaena because I attended classes in it. And the more I look at, I remember coming down those stairs and the bad boys would go behind that water tank and smoke cigarettes, after lunch. And if you went back there, the boys would give you really stink eye. And if you breathed a word about it, you were going to get your throat slit. So we never did. We just ran away. But this, I meant to go up there and see if it's still standing, but it is the intermediate school. It was a big deal. And it had bathrooms downstairs. I know people in Kona who all went to school in that building. It was good fun. So yes.
So immediately that's recognizable. We know that this is Konaawaena School, and there's this field of people playing donkey baseball. So the next step I took was I just kind of asked my colleagues here at Kona Historical Society. We all have such varied interests. You never know who knows something about something. And I asked everyone on staff. Nobody knew donkey baseball. Even Maile didn't know. We didn't know what donkey baseball was. But eventually I went to our facilities manager, John Palmer, and he goes, "Yeah, I know what donkey baseball is. It's a fundraiser." And so he kind of pointed us in the right direction for that. So after that, we got online and found some silly videos and things and learned that donkey baseball was this sporting fad that happened in the 1930s. Perhaps as like a reaction to wanting something lighthearted, some civic event that felt funny and silly after the Great Depression. It was first done in Iowa in 1934, I believe. And then it kind of just caught on. It's not a serious game, as you can imagine. It's meant to be funny, and it's meant to be a fundraiser. We don't know who's in this photo, but it was likely some sort of civic event. So we were poking around more in our archives, found lots of donkey photos. I'll show you guys those later. But then I had the thought to check out the online collections that we have of the Kona Echo. So the Kona Echo, and Maile, jump in if I get any of this wrong. The Kona Echo was a Japanese newspaper here, a Japanese American newspaper here, but that was run, I don't know the exact dates, but it was run from the early 1900s to the mid 1900s by Dr. Hayashi. And it's actually a very important newspaper. It was the second of its kind in the islands. And I decided to go ahead and search there. Now, I'm not on my computer, so I got to figure out how to. So if anyone's interested in this, it's actually quite fun to poke around on these newspapers. If you go to Kona Historical's website, you guys can still see my screen? Maile, can you see where I'm at?
I see Ku'ulani.
There's Ku'ulani, yeah. So go to our website and go to digital resources. And when you do that, you'll end up on this page. And this is a newspaper project done by a different library over at Hoover Library in California. But they wanted to get all the Japanese newspapers, and they wanted ours for the use of the Kona Echo. So here it is. And when I went to search, I found that this does in fact talk about donkey baseball. You get a couple of finds here, and I believe it is this one, November 16th, donkey baseball at Konaawaena again, but this one is actually a few years earlier. This is 1938. But it is so you can zoom in like this, and you can see and you can read. So this is about a Lions Club conference that they were hosting here, and it's just giving a review of everything they did. And here you can see they did donkey baseball. So it reads, in the afternoon, a game of donkey baseball was played to the fun of all. The game is played like baseball, but the players ride the donkeys with the exception of the pitcher, catcher, and the batter. The batter, instead of running to bases, mounts the donkey and rides to bases. The ball in play is always thrown while on the donkey, which makes the game exciting. So clearly this is something that we thought would be fun here in Kona, probably because we have a lot of donkeys here. We have donkeys to spare. And I actually also in this, if you guys go and want to check out this newspaper, you'll also see there's a donkey polo game referenced. We didn't have time to research that one, but apparently we also did donkey polo here in Kona back in the day. So here, let me go back to my, so this is probably a civic gathering of people hanging out, playing donkey baseball. But if there's anyone tuning in who's not from Hawaii or not from Kona, we wanted to tell you a little bit about the history of donkeys in Kona. So donkeys are very important here. They've been here a long time. I don't know that we know when they got here. Maile, do we know when they got here?
Well, not exactly in Kona, but we know when they got to Honolulu because of the British consul, Richard Charlton, I believe. It's in a Maile meandering.
Yeah. Those are online. Maile has it's kind of like a blog called Maile's Meanderings on our website that has even more good stuff. Yeah, so we don't know what, but they ended up being really useful here. They're great beasts of burden, and people could could ride them into town to pick up their groceries and such. And donkeys in Kona have a really special nickname. Donkeys here are known as Kona nightingales. And I always get to tell this to the school kids when we do field trips with them. And it's fun because it often comes as a surprise to them, because it's kind of an older term to use for your donkeys in Kona. But they're named after nightingales, which are, of course, the birds that sing at night, because our donkeys in Kona would get lonely at night. Most farms only had one. It was kind of expensive to have two. And at night, they wanted to talk about their day and what had happened, and know that another donkey was around. And so when you fall asleep at night in Kona in the 1930s, you'd have donkeys all across the hill just calling to each other very, very loudly. So these are known as Kona nightingales, and they're very special to the heritage of Kona in particular. So that's what we could find out just looking at the photo, observing the place, observing the people, pulling pieces from what we know of what Konaawaena is to the community, how it's an event center at times, knowing what we know about donkeys. But then we found out more by looking into the photographer, and that's where I'm going to pass it off to Maile, who's going to tell us about the photographer of this picture. Do you want me to go ahead and scroll over to his portrait?
Well, why not, Audrey? If you can get there.
But when I do this, we're going to pass a bunch of very cute donkey photos. Just hang tight. We're going to go over these photos later. My thing is out of order. So these will be talked about. Don't worry. Oh, here he is.
Okay, you see that serious looking minister on the right with the glasses and the small mustache. You cannot believe it. That is my husband, Ken Melrose's grandfather, the Reverend K O Miller. And he is doing his best to look very Yale Theological School graduate, which is what he was. He is a real East Coast man who worked his way through Yale singing. He had a beautiful voice. And I mean, he must have died when he got to Kona and heard donkeys, and they called them Kona nightingales. But anyway, the Reverend K O Miller came to Kona in 1937 with his wife, Gertrude. So that little picture over there on the left, on the bottom, that is the Reverend K O Miller kind of smirking, I'd have to say, in the white jacket. And his wife, Gertrude, who is wonderful, tutu, and lived until like 1990, fabulous, wonderful grandmother-in-law. She's over there on the right. And in between them is Bishop Littell, the head of the Episcopalian Church back then in the into the 40s. And then he retired, and in came Bishop Harry Kennedy, who lots of people know very well. And what's kind of fun, above that bottom picture of Reverend K.O. and his wife Gertrude, the bishop, there is the Reverend K.O. again. He obviously really liked this contrast between dark and light. So he's in his white jacket again. His wife is one step over. That is a young Miss Cushingham. That is so fun. That is Frances Cushingham's daughter. I think her name, oh my God, is Marjorie. But these, I know that's an Ackerman, and we've got a Weeks, and we've got, these are local gals, and they're dressed up because it is World War II. So the Reverend K.O. Miller gets to Kona in 1937. He is here until his death, 1944, and he is the correct personality to record what was going on, to throw himself into the community as a Boy Scout leader, a USO. He created the United States overseas, because of course Hawaii is not a state or a territory. During the war, he was an extremely hardworking, working for God, working for the community kind of man. Terrific. So, of course, donkey baseball. He took the picture because he had a camera. You'll notice women are not running around in Kona taking pictures. Somehow it's a guy thing to do. If there's anybody out there with a lady taking pictures, let us know, because she is going to be unusual. Okay, Audrey, back to you.
Well, do you want to talk about these two photos?
Well, of course, this is kind of good fun. So yeah. Here is this picture over here on the left, caretaker for Christ Episcopal Church, circa 1940. That is William Joseph Ga, and he is standing by a cage of what look like little tiny birds. They kind of look like ducks to me, which is weird, but I think they should be chickens, or maybe they're dead chickens. Anyway, Joe Ga, William Ga, he's identified, but his name is William Joseph Ga. he was the caretaker at the church. And of course, he is married to Kay Ga, and they have kids that grew up in Kona kind of a little bit ahead of me. But this is a perfect picture of World War II, because everybody in World War II did not go get their groceries at KTA. You were growing the stuff. You were raising your own pigs, you were raising your own chickens, hardly any food. And if you had any food, the patriotic thing to do was honestly to save it for the army, because we had so many military people here stationed in the islands, and food, they were worried about food now, they were worried about food then. So there's Mr. Ga looking very happy. And again, Mr. Miller took this picture. Joe Ga lives right over by Central Kona Union Church. He probably walked to work every day and, you know, clipped the grass around the gravestones and built little buildings, and he built the cute little grass shack. Wonderful. And see, then what's fun in this collection that has come to Kona Historical Society, taken by K O Miller, given by his daughter Charlotte Miller Melrose, is scaffolding and water bridges. So that's a photograph of Hamakua. You know, Kona doesn't have any gulches like that. That's a Hamakua thing. And what's kind of fun is this is the era of the sugar cane, you know, cane being trucked all over the place, and passengers, including the military, coming out of Hilo, coming up the Hamakua coast, and they had built these enormous bridges to get as far as Pauilo. And that's why there's a railroad museum when you go into Hilo on the old Hamakua Road. And you think, well, why did all those scaffolds fall down? Why didn't we save them? Why aren't they historic? Well, all you have to think about is the terrific, like the 1946 tidal wave that came in and wiped out the bottom of Waipio. This train never got as far as, of course it didn't get to Waipio, but it wiped out the foundations for lots of the other buttresses for this railroad track. 46, I mean, huge tidal wave would just run up those gulches on the Hamakua coast, ripping out everything, and everything went down. But kind of amazing that Mr. Miller took that photo, and it ends up here in the collection of the Kona Historical Society, because it's taken by a Kona resident. You know, Mr. Miller committed himself to Kona, and he dies here, and his ashes are here, and his family is here. That's what happens. Yay.
Yeah. So we'll go back before we head on to these other mystery photos. We'll go back to this one. So, so that was our process for finding out about this picture of just digging up what we could. The one thing we didn't talk about was how we figured out the date, and kind of a conundrum me and Maile were exploring this morning as we chatted. So Maile, we have that date, that 1943 date actually came from a record that you had in your family pictures, right?
Well, I think it's Ken's mother. It's Charlotte Miller Melrose's handwriting, and she writes 1943. But it's interesting. I would go back to that story in the Kona Echo. I mean, these probably are lions, and it said cafeteria, and the old cafeteria at Konaawaena, because I got to Konaawaena just when they'd built the new cafeteria, but the old one was down there and had anthuriums painted underneath. It was kind of a fun building. And family members get things wrong. I mean, we all know this. They get it right now when we're talking to them in their faces, but they really get it wrong when they get a pencil and they're old and they're thinking, ooh, gee, I think, you know, Charlotte wasn't here. Charlotte was at Punahou, for crying out loud, in boarding school. She was a teenager. She wasn't here in Kona. Maybe her father scribbled 1943. Maybe her mother did.
Yeah.
It could be wrong. It could be 1938. What do we know? We'd have to get a car expert to look at the models of these cars. And, you know, if somebody knew the donkeys or these men. Yeah. Okay.
Or if there's anybody who knows the men who are in here.
These are local. I see Susan's question. No, I don't think most households had donkeys, Susan. The Greenwells did not have donkeys. I think this is very much coffee land. And this is Tashima's family had a donkey to deliver tofu over in Honolo. Yeah, little beasts of burden. These were pre-Jeep, you know, truck. So they had to collect these things. But the tricky thing is, if you want a mule, you had to have a donkey, because a mule is a cross between a horse and a donkey. So post-sugar plantation, the sugar plantation, you know, croaked in Kona 1928, 29. Technically, there could have been a bunch of donkeys left over for breeding. Usually you got a good male. That's a male donkey we're looking at right there with that man looking Mauka. He looks like waiting for the ball to come to him or something, but he looks cool. So you need a jack. That's called a jack. And you get a jack and you put him on a, you get him up on a ladder and you get a great big percheron mare. You get a great big girl and you breed to her and you will end up with a king-size donkey, which is terrific for sugar work, any kind of work. You want a big donkey. You don't want some.
Oh yeah.
You don't want a teeny mule. Teeny mules are not very helpful. These are terribly cute with their little white noses and their adorable little stripy backs.
Oh, we also, we have a question that I think you might be able to answer, Maile, better than me anyways. So the Kona Echo was named after the Kona Echo, the sound. Can you talk about what that was? Not the newspaper, but the sound. What time of day? Can you still hear it? What is the legend of the Kona Echo?
Well, this is really one of those stories that's most peculiar, but it's written down in some darling old books of the time. And everyone thinks it probably was a lava tube, some sort of lava tube cave thing, kind of right in Konaawaena, right Mauka of like the Buddhist church, Kona Daifukuji. It was like up there in the forest. So this is some sort of lava tube in the Ohia forest. So it's not dead obvious. Everybody didn't know. But at night, in Kona, in the daytime, the wind blows onto the shore. And at night, the land cools off and the wind comes down, off of Mauna Loa, and it's cool and it's spooky. And the wind would blow through this lava tube and make this woo. I mean, honestly, it made a scary sound. And so they called it, ooh, the Kona Echo. And it probably had a creepy habit of, if there was a loud sound, like, can you imagine if there was a thunderstorm and then it went right over this lava tube and then you get this horrible,
Yeah.
echo. But obviously it was so distinctive that Dr. Hayashi, this is Dr. Chisato Hayashi's father, who came from Japan, I mean, just a genius man and his beautiful wife, that they would pick this, and probably for the very kind of poetic reason that if an event happened, his newspaper could echo it with words and explanation, which is just a darling, thoughtful name and totally unique. There's no Wailuku Echo or a Honolulu Echo. No, there's only a Kona Echo. He was proud of Kona. Yay, civic spirit. Yeah, terrific for you, Dr. Hayashi.
And sorry, did you say, when did the Kona Echo stop? When did the noise? When did we stop hearing it?
Well, people aren't really sure. Either some dumbbell bulldozed, did a tree fall down and cracked? It was an earthquake. Let's think about it. A big earthquake came in 1951, the lava tube collapsed. It seems not to be making its noise anymore. But I think superstitious kind of scary people think that they can still hear a little bit of it at night. If you ever hear a kind of creepy sound at night, you go to yourself, I'm hearing the Kona Echo. That means
the Kokies are too loud now. You can't hear anything but them.
It was silent. And I think, it's funny that the donkey would end up being called Kona Nightingale, because who in Kona has ever seen a nightingale? Only somebody from Europe.
Yeah.
I don't think Japan has nightingales,
I don't know. That's a good question, like kind of how that nickname got established, how they knew.
Another peculiar
thing. But I like to keep the name alive. I meet a lot of people who don't know that they're called Kona Nightingales. So I like to keep the name alive. It makes them very unique. And of course, we have some at our Living History farm, although they do not talk because they're always together. So they're pretty happy donkeys. I want to have time to go through some of these other mystery photos, but I think what this illustrates is that, in our archive, it's so exciting to just find one photo and go off on all these different paths of conversation about what this photo means to our community, what stories it could tell. We could go into all kinds of topics further on this photo. If 1943 is the right date and they were also playing it in 1938, I want to know about the other donkey baseball games. So is there a league? Who was doing this? Or talking about Konaawaena and all the different events that happened there, because the donkey polo also happened there. So there's a lot of different directions to go, which I think is a really cool piece to any photo. And that's why I like Maile's meanderings. If you guys have not read any of Maile's meanderings, you should. They're right on our website where I was on before. And they're really a joy to read. So we decided, as we were talking about this, that we would just pull up some other photos of donkeys, because we have really, where's let me go? Oh, there we go. Okay, we have some really good ones in our archive, some really interesting ones that we'd love to know more about. This one we actually have a name and a business associated. This is a sake delivery from Mr. Suin. I'm not sure if I'm going to say that right. Suinaga.
Suinaga.
Right? Okay, yes. And this is, I think, anyways, this was in a weird part of the object record. I think this is Hayato Hirokawa delivering sake with his donkey. Do you know anything else about that photo?
Well, it's just darling. I mean, that man's, you know, he got married, he had kids. His son, Paul Hirokawa, gave the photo to Kona Historical Society. I think Paul is still alive. He went to the Chicago Institute of Art. I mean, it's just incredible to say, and this young man who's riding that donkey, you know, is not just any young man. He's an educated, smart, not a peasant class immigrant, but he left Japan because the Japanese were conscripting young men to go fight the Chinese in Manchuria, and he did not want to go to Manchuria. He did not want to die. What a smart man you were, Hayato. And he ends up in Kona. And of course, again, the photograph. How can you not love this photograph? I mean,
I know. Look at the donkey's sweet I love looking at old photographs of old donkeys in Kona, because ours at the farm have to be descended from some of them. You know, they don't get imported anymore. So somewhere there's their ancestry as donkeys. And then this one, I don't think we know much about it. This one over here on the right, but it is a sweet little photo. They have a cart, and I haven't seen another photo. I've seen people riding their donkeys. I'll show our next slide. I'll have some people riding donkeys. But these folks seem to have some sort of cart riding their donkey. There's a little child next to them who's not in the cart, just hanging out. I don't know what they're doing, heading off into town or so. This is around 1910, but you know, it's another mystery to solve another day, I guess. Do you know anything about that one, Maile?
No, I've never seen it in my life. I think Julie, you know, you look at that house, it's a 20th century wooden house. It's got that, you know, latticey stuff underneath it. It looks like, you know, I bet we could figure out who these people are. There are not that many, you know, it's a white family, obviously, you know, they're Howleys. They've come from some, you know, and she's sitting there, that donkey's got like, you know, white eyeliner. It's so cute. It's got that tuft, and it is, it could be a child's cart. And I'd have to say that the wife is, well, she's sitting there kind of on top of her husband's lap or something in this cart.
Yeah, it's kind of a silly photo. It kind of looks like they're off to have an adventure or something. I'm not sure and the child isn't in the cart with them, so I'm not quite sure what they're up to. It kind of to me looks like she's smiling.
Oh, she's totally laughing.
Yeah.
Holding the reins. I mean, she's brave. Someone's saying, hey, go over there, I'll take the picture. It's probably supposed to be the child is sitting on the father or the grandfather's lap.
Oh, yeah. Maybe,
yeah. And standing in the doorway. You know, there's somebody leaning in the doorway and looking out at them. No, I'm sure
that's right. Yeah, you can see a figure there.
Somebody could figure out what building this is. This is a little attachment to somebody's house. And
so for anyone who doesn't know or didn't hear, we're actually doing a little program, a little partnership with West Hawaii Today. I'm not sure how frequently, but our collections manager, Julie, is sending them mystery photos to get some identifications. And actually we've done our first one, and we already have, it was a basketball team, sorry, the Hawks, I believe. And they've already been identified. Somebody figured it out for us. Somebody in the community knows. Which always seems to be the case. I'm going to scroll to our next slide. And guys, if you have questions, you can go ahead and submit your questions, and we will answer them as we just talk about these photographs. There it goes. Oh, so these ones are probably two of my favorite that we came across because they're just adorable. You can tell they're posed. You can tell this is the same photographer. They came from the same collection. You can see down there the accession numbers. If the first few numbers are the same, it tells you that they were the same year or the same batch or the same collection. So these guys came from the same batch. I guess I can't say the same photographer. I don't know for certain. But we were quite taken with these ones when we saw them, right, Maile?
Oh, absolutely. And you can tell me there's a great entrance to this property. I mean, there's a stone wall. There's a, you know,
this gate back here.
Yeah, that gate and papaya trees. But I mean, it's so cute. See, Audrey and I never saw these until like, you know, not very long ago. And this is adorable. The children are with the baby donkey. The baby donkey's all fuzzy and has masses of hair and is just teensy. And these children are very cute, wearing matching outfits, which is just darling. And you wonder, this must be a special occasion. I don't think children in Kona ran around in little matching outfits like this all the time with this kind of shoot
Yeah.
capri look for the boys. And then of course the women are totally laughing. They are on their donkeys, the two of them. They have great black stockings, great little heeled shoes, back to back. And I was thinking, it's so funny because women still, if this date is right, 1910, riding astride for a woman is not always the done thing to do. I mean, some women literally were still riding side saddle in 1910, very much so. So it's almost like, oh, they're with their skirts hitched up on the back of the donkey, very comfortable.
And look at that donkey. That donkey is standing strong. They can carry a lot of weight. They can carry probably more than those two women, because they would carry big coffee bags and loads of wood and loads of water, loads of sake. And that donkey's doing fine. They're standing there nice and strong. It's clearly used to it.
Contemplating lashing out at somebody.
Yeah. Okay, let's see.
Horseback riders, you can tell they're very comfortable.
Yeah. They're very comfortable. Yeah, definitely. Let's see, I've got it on sound. There it goes. All right, I forget what our next. Oh, this photo. Now, this one, just this morning we talked about, and Maile knew who this was. I was telling her what I could about the object record for this photo. It's very obviously in Kealakekua Bay, but this woman on a donkey near Kealakekua Bay is all it says in our object record. But doing a little more investigation, and Maile was able to tell us who this is. Maile, who is this?
Well, you were able to tell me who it was, Audrey, because some of the photo, it said this is Edith Ongst Smith. So this is why Antu is going to be so interested. And the collection came from a person, Nancy, you said Klotz?
A name, yeah, Nancy Klontz. I'm not sure who that is in relation to. I think
she has got to be a relative of the Ongst family. And what is so great about this picture, well, it's a fabulous picture. Look at the ears on that donkey. I mean, when they talk about long ears, this little donkey's got great long ears. Yeah. This donkey has a real saddle on, because look at that lady. I mean, that is a real Western saddle. It's got a big pommel in the front. This gal is not wearing, I don't know what kind of outfit this is, but she's charming. Her hat is charming. And Edith Ongst, she was born Edith Ongst, and it's her father, Luther Ongst, whose house is still up in Holualoa, because Antu, yes, Edith was Luther and Emma's daughter. Of course, she was their daughter. I mean, she has a brother, Lester, and Lester went off to the war and got, I think, shell shock and bad things, but perhaps there's another brother, Edith Ongst Smith. I'm pretty dang sure, was married, but never had any children. And she used to go to Christ Church. So the same church where the Rev K O Miller was when I went to church in the 60s, early 70s, Edith Ongst Smith from Antu. Yes, Elmer was one of the sons. Okay, yeah, Elmer, and then, well, maybe Elmer got married and this is one of his grandchildren or something, whoever Nancy is. Thank you, Nancy, for giving these pictures, because Edith, as an elderly woman, had beautiful silvery white hair, often wear a hat to church, often wear little heels. Do you see she is riding that donkey with high, I mean, she's not messing around. Her heels are really great. She was a beautifully, impeccably dressed lady. And you can tell by looking at her as a young woman, she's smiling. She loved clothes. She liked to dress up. And her father is responsible for putting up the telephone wires. He is the man who is wiring from Kau to Waimea when there was a telephone installed, here at apparently Aunt Christina, when she was living here at Kalu Kalu in 1896, 1897, the telephone could ring. This is because of Mr. Ongst. If he hadn't moved to Kona, we wouldn't have had any telephones. Somebody else would have had to move here, but this man was a go-getter. He went to Honolulu. He was hired like the Royal Telephone Company, got a contract to Kona, to Kau, to Kona, and then later Kona to Waimea. And all of us who drive along, especially, it's so obvious in the old days, if you drive to South Point or drive to Waimea, you'd see these little wooden telephone poles sitting in the lava. They were left over from Mr. Ongst. They were, he had his workers. Mr. Inaba of the Inaba Hotel in Holualoa used to be for Mr. Angst, because everybody would go out for 5 days a week, pounding in these telephone poles, and Mr. Inaba would go and cook for the crew, and then they'd all come back to Holualoa for the weekend, check out the children, little Edith, say hello to their wives, and then run back out to the wilds, you know, and camp out and put up these poles. So to see Edith looking so wonderful, and when you look in the background, I mean, there are boats in the water, you know, there's more than one boat in the water, and you could see probably a kind of cool opuma tree, looks like it's draping down behind her. And in a, you know, it looks different. And Emma's brother,
a beautiful portrait.
And their grandson was in the Kingston Trio. Are you kidding me? Okay, Emma's brother married a Hitchcock. Their son was in Kingston. Well, I have a feeling it's got to be one of his descendants then, because if, you know, if Edith has none, and oh God, just died this year. This is Auntie Harvey to all. Yes, just died this year. So fabulous. So what this means, it's very important for descendants to look in the closet, get out the photo books, take pictures of them nowadays, but share them, because this is a priceless, darling, over 100 years old. Here's this lovely woman. And Kona Historical has never looked at this picture publicly before, has it, Audrey?
You know, I couldn't say for sure if it's been used in an exhibit or a pop-up exhibit at some point. I know some of the other ones we looked at have, but not anytime, I don't think recently, not at least in the last 10 years.
No.
There's nothing in the record that said it was used anywhere.
It's so cute.
It's so cute.
Bob Shane from Auntie Harvey. Bob Shane, family name was Schoen, S-C-H-O-E-N. Okay, well, this lady who gave the photograph is Nancy K-L-O-T-S?
C-L-O-N-T-S, Clontz.
Clontz, oh, sorry. C-L.
There might be somebody, I mean, maybe Pixie or Ku'ulani knows her or knows who, because they maybe were here. This was given in 1999. And actually, those two photos are in the same collection. They're the same like group. So, but neither of those are Edith, obviously. But I guess, I don't know, would one of those women on the horse possibly be here or no?
I don't think so. That's not her style. I don't.
Yeah, it doesn't look like the same person to me, but these are all in the same collection. And we don't know who took the photos.
Oh, I'm sure Mr. Angst.
Oh, Mr. Oh, yeah, that's right. But it's not in our records. So now I feel like we need to update some of our records now, because we have found out things through this little dive into donkey because that date was not in our donkey baseball photo. So we're adding the maybe dates. We don't know which one it is, but so we have a couple more. These ones are older. I wanted to make sure of the many donkey pictures we had. I wanted to make sure we had some older ones too. So this is 1914, 1910. But here we are getting to 1935, and I think this one is, let's see, it's got 1940. So these ones are fun. You can see people riding right into town on their donkeys to go to the store or trade something or just visit a friend. Who knows what they're up to? We don't have names for these. We don't know who these people are. But this one in particular is cute. You see there's a dog running beside the donkey, headed to wherever they're going to. What can we pull from these photographs? Maile, what do you notice?
Well, I'm noticing that the first one on the right, I'm just wondering, Audrey, because the story Kona Historical always tells is that Jeeps came to Hawaii with the Army. And so I see a really nice Army Jeep sitting there. So I'm wondering about this date, because, you know, did we have Jeeps in World War II to meet? I had a Jeep that looked just like that with one of those lucite panels stuck. That is a custom addition to your Jeep. To stop the grass from flying in on the side and poking you in the eye when you're driving along. So someone's dolled up that Jeep, and that man, that's a great picture, because he's either got a bag of something resting on his very strong and big.
It says he actually, I'm looking at the object record. It says the guy in the photo doesn't have his name, but he was a worker for Paris Ranch.
Well, see, that's good fun.
Another clue.
The Paris Ranch, and we should show this to WJ Paris, shouldn't we? And see, the Paris's owned land, that road, I think that man is running up Napopo Road, because the stone
Mm-hmm.
wall looked like that and the slope of the land. And that's where, Margaret Chatauer still lives in the original Paris missionary house. Yeah, I think that's totally him.
Yeah.
And this other one, when I first saw it, and it's hard to see now because our tiles are in front of it, but that little gateway in the stone wall, it made me think of Kailua. But
Well, we actually know who they're writing in front of. It says McWayne's house. McWayne.
oh, okay, yeah. Well,
That's what it says in front of that family's house, I guess.
Well, the McWaynes had a house in Kailua, and they had in. Well, I'm going to say. I mean, I know there's a little dead McWayne buried in the Holualoa graveyard, so I don't know if their house was up there. But this looks kind of Kailua-y to have that road so broad and wide.
Yeah, that's a good point. They weren't like that up here. They're still not like that up here.
No, they're not. And those trees and it's really nice. Darling.
Yeah. So there's more stories to tell with donkey photos, and these aren't even all the ones we have in our collections. These are mainly the ones that don't come out a lot. We do have some, like everyone's probably seen the one with the donkey in the coffee field, and he's got his worker with him, and he's got his, he's loaded up with coffee beans or coffee cherry, sorry, and everyone's seen that one. So we were trying to pull ones people haven't seen, and I would love to do one of these on each of these, but we just don't have the time to do all the research. But if anyone knew anything about these, definitely reach out to us. That is all the photos we have, and except for one more that we wanted to kind of end on, although we do have a couple more minutes if anyone would like to ask a question. We have one last photo to end our little chat that the Reverend took. So Maile, tell us about this photo, what's happening here.
Well, this is pure Kenneth O. Miller. I mean, this is just a wonderful picture. And if anybody goes to Christchurch, I mean, this would be Meg Green, but lots of people go to Christchurch. The geography hasn't changed at all. The church is the oldest church in the Kingdom of Hawaii. So the church is still there, minus the water tank, the same old shape, 1867. And there's a stone wall that is separating. This is the ladies, the USO, they are feeding the American servicemen in the open lawn of the church. They're having Thanksgiving dinner in Christ Episcopal Churchyard, US Center, World War II. And this photo came from Barbara Greenwell Fitzgibbons, who still has, a son alive. Michael and Stella in Texas, shout out to you, members of Kona Historical Society. And what is so fun is this particular picture doesn't show it, but my grandmother is in there. My Aunt Beth is there. I mean, Mrs. Weeks, Mrs. Everybody, because Gertrude, the Reverend K O Miller, don't think, this is pure Gertrude. Gertrude apparently would get hold of women. She'd get hold of my Aunt Beth and say, Beth, you have to make 12 elderberry pies because you are not going to the store and find bushels of apples. Are you kidding me? Where are you going to find? There are hundreds of young servicemen. Look at them all. Their cute hairdos. They're all dressed in their, military clothes. They're sitting on benches. Where did they get all these benches and tables? There's no Costco. I mean, what is going on here? And there are tablecloths, and then people have ties on, and the ladies have dresses, and everybody's helping. So they definitely cooked a whole bunch, and people do raise their own turkeys. I bet you could do a whole show on turkey pictures too with it.
Oh, really?
Well, turkeys came to Hawaii in the 1800s. There were wild turkeys, and the same thing in that cage where Joe Ga was standing up to the cute baby chick. I mean, they look kind of weird, ducks. He could have had a bunch of turkeys out back. You could bet probably these women, some women were fattening up turkeys all year long on avocados and chicken feed. There's no chicken feed, to feed these turkeys, to kill them, to feed everybody. And, maybe they had a pig, or they had to really improvise, I think.
Right.
But it's happy because now we're having Thanksgiving tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah.
America. And just like this meal is eaten under the shadow of an active war. These young men are here in Kona being trained, rehabilitation. Reverend K O Miller, at the bottom of that picture on the far right is Wallace Hall. It is still there. And apparently Mr. Miller, that was a retired minister's house. They built that for the Reverend D.D. Wallace, but Mr. Miller went in, renovated this, made little reading rooms, letter writing tables with note paper so that soldiers could come in and write letters to their parents, crying out loud, who didn't know where they were. Ping pong tables. I mean, terribly clean cut, charming, thoughtful. And you bet Mr. Miller, as a young, he had a bad heart. He never could be in the service. He was a minister. But he probably did counsel these young men who were kind of maybe scared going off to die, to fight. I mean, missing home. It's very, very poignant. And now we have this ghastly pandemic, and people are feeling rather poignant right now. They're far from their families sometimes, or they can't see who they want to see.
Yeah. And
then we couldn't possibly do what this is, bring everything together. We couldn't even do this. Nope. Even if, the Rev K O Miller was here and Gertrude, I'd say, Gertrude, we can't do this.
Taking pictures of me and you in separate offices, talking to a computer.
That's right. I like this. It just shows Kona. It's just like the donkey baseball. Kona is part of the world, part of America. If something is happening, sooner or later, it will come here to Kona, and the people of this district will rise up and do the right thing. They just always have. They're wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much, Maile. I'm going to just end on this slide, which has a picture of today's donkeys. I actually just took this yesterday of Shizu and Charlie, where there were this little vine growing that looked like hearts. So I threw it in there. Come and see them, guys. I wanted to, before we end our little session, I wanted to just say, we're really happy we can offer these programs for free. If you're interested in supporting us, there's a couple of opportunities coming up. We've got our Giving Tuesday campaign, which is actually about raising money to get a better research setup in the archive so people can come in and do research a lot more comfortably with a lot more access. So that is happening on December 1st. And the second one happening the next week is our online auction, which has some really, really cool items, including a meet and greet with the donkeys you see in that photo right there, where you can come and see them and get in the pasture with me closer than you ever would otherwise. And a private cemetery tour of the Christchurch Cemetery with our very own Maile Melrose. We're bringing that program back to auction off. And Maile, you did that for years, right?
I did it for many times. Yes, we did. Pre-Koki Frog, post-Koki Frog, Konaawaena football, anytime. And it's still abbreviated in case somebody thinks it's exactly the same. Because
yes, it will be different. We'll have to follow, depending on when, whoever gets it, uses it, we'll have to do different protocols for COVID. But it should be really fun. I'm very excited about the cemetery tours. And there's a lot of good stuff on there. Antiques, experiences, gift cards, and there's a wide price range too. So even if you only have $10 to spend, there's definitely something on there for you. So check those two things out if you want to support Kona Historical Society right now. And I didn't see any other questions, but if we did miss any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and I'll do my best to answer any questions, any lingering thoughts or curiosities we had about any of these really fascinating photos. I feel like we told 20 different stories today, which is really energizing, I think. While everything's so quiet and pandemic and crazy, hearing so much about Kona's history in just a few photographs is inspiring and uplifting. So thank you so much, Maile, for being here.
Well, that's a very cute picture you took of those donkeys with the little heart vine. I mean, it's just perfect. It's just perfect. Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah. Thanks. All right, everyone. Aloha. We'll see you next time.
Aloha. Here's Carol. Okay, she's going to press the button. And it's Lee.